I would not walk outside unless I was attached to my mother for at least a year. It took me many years to feel safe anywhere alone, but it always made, God, I'm emotional. It always made me feel really broken and dirty and damaged because of being what happened to me. I felt pain. I felt fear. I didn't trust, figures that you should trust in your life. So I did anything to get outside of myself, honestly.
This is Rooted Recovery Stories. I'm Patrick Custer, your host, and so excited to be here with my friend, interventionist, featured on this upcoming season of A&E's show, Intervention, and owner of Next Level Associates, Amanda Marino.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks so much for having me here.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad that you're here visiting Nashville and all of our friends.
Yes. I even saw another friend pop his head out from behind the house. So there's lots of love and energy around here.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. I'm like when I was landing, I was like, this feels right. I'm meant to be here right now. It feels really good.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe there's a future in Nashville for Miss Marino. We'll see.
I love Nashville.
Awesome.
I do.
Well, God, I'm so glad that you're here, and I want to kick things off. We're going to talk about your story, and I'm going to try and get as much as I can out of you about the new season of Intervention that I'm so excited. We've been waiting for this season to come out now for
forever.
How long?
So this is the second show I've done with them with Annie. Uh-huh. So I know the deal. So when I did Digital Addiction with them a few years ago, we almost waited like a year for it to come out. So I've done this before with them, and it's like they're trying to plan it and get it in the right timeline. Mm-hmm. So I've been I thought it was going to be like February-ish. And then, now I just honestly don't know. So I wasn't in acceptance a few times recently, but I've let it go and said, hey, when I see a commercial or when I am see my episode, then I'll know it's airing.
Isn't it funny how the longer and longer we stay in sober and recovery, we have more and more opportunities to practice letting go and acceptance in the other areas of our life.
Yes. When I'm spiritually grounded and centered, I can kind of, accept many things.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's jump back a little bit before we started learning about how to accept some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to hear about where you started out in life and where little Amanda grew up.
Okay. I'm born in Fort Lauderdale. I was raised, I lived down in Fort Lauderdale until I was around 8 years old. I am someone who's very openly, I talk about my abuse. It makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't make me uncomfortable. It actually heals me every time I talk about it, oddly, since I've been in the process of healing my trauma. So from ages 4 to 7, I was sexually abused. My mother was severely domestically abused in front of me. The man who I thought was my father, because he adopted me when I was young, he was my abuser, my mom's abuser. He, was a drug dealer, but everybody in the daytime thought he was like a good church guy, So coming into recovery, I had a really hard time with that whole stuff, the God piece, because I'm like, how can somebody be like that in the daytime and then be like this at night? So he was really a sick human. Once my mom took a lot of,
but can I just interject there? Because immediately when you say that, I think I don't share a similar story there, but many people who I've talked to in real life that have abuse stories, their abuser, they describe their abuser very similarly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't help but think how many people who are listening or watching right now might be in the same position, thinking that because the person who is or has abused me is in such a place of privilege, power, and or prestige, no one will possibly believe me.
No, that's a sociopath thing too. You know what I mean? I think, and my mother's life was threatened many times by him, and she had guns held over. I mean, all kinds of crazy things. Oh. So my mom was terrified. That's why she didn't leave. But when she found out that I was being molested, when I came to her with that, that's when she put the plan together. And I remember a dramatic running, she was dragged by her hair along a dock in Fort Lauderdale and thrown over the intercoastal onto coral. We somehow got out of there. Both were being hung by our necks.
Well, now hold on. did this happen because he found out there was a plan for?
No. This was just a regular day. This is how it was. Yeah, this was the end though. This was like him and his friend are holding me and my mom up by our necks. And then she got dragged to the intercoastal. And then all of a sudden, next day I remember her and I were running to a cab, and people were chasing us, and we got away. Yeah. And that was like my first sense of like, okay, we're getting away, but it didn't end there.
So when you talk about getting away, what did that look like for y'all? I mean, was there family that you went to? What did getting away to safety?
From what I remember, because I've talked about it a lot in therapy, was my mother got a restraining order, things like that. So he couldn't come within so many feet, but he was a very sick individual and crossed those boundaries and like stalked us. So after that happened and we got away, I found out that there was another man that was my dad, which hit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, okay, great. That awful man isn't my dad, but why wasn't my dad here to help me and save me from this man, right? So I had a lot of mixed emotions. So we moved up to Boston to be with my dad for a little bit, and they tried to rekindle.
And what was it like meeting your real father?
Oh, God, a lot. I was 7, I was young, and it was really intense. I had a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of excited that that guy wasn't my dad, but also like, again, like resentful in a way. Of like, where were you? Why didn't you help me? This little girl. And at that time, the abuser was having people watch us, spy on us, and stalk us.
In Boston?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And
did you all know that this was going on?
My mother told me years later she did. And she was like we were kind of like in hiding almost, like trying to hide from this really sick man, sure. And it was different back then. Like, I don't think that some of the things that went on would have happened like in today's world, but this is, many years ago. Yep. So we ended up, my mom and dad didn't end up working out and then rekindling. We came back to Florida. My mother was a psych nurse in this like local psych hospital, worked 3 to 11 shifts, sometimes doubles, and we'd stay with my grandparents. And it was lawn maintenance day, where like there's lawn people all over the neighborhood. And, it's like, you just kind of, pay attention. Well, one of the guys, I'm riding my bike in a little circle. My little sister is a year old, sitting at the end of, this is his actual daughter, the abuser. She's standing at the end of a sidewalk. And this guy just has a 7-Eleven like gulp, the gulp cup. Yeah. And he ran over, grabbed my sister, knocked me over my bike and started running to the road. And I'm freaking out, screaming. And we lived in like those kind of like a condo area. So everyone's coming out of their houses and people are like, what's going on? And my grandparents are trying to run to help, but they're old, And I see a car coming around the corner and I'm flagging it down. Help, help. This guy's taking my sister. It is him in the driver's seat, my abuser.
I just got pit in my stomach.
Yeah. It was like, and then he stopped, grabbed my sister and put her in the middle. And they were like, grab her too, about me. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. I have a loud mouth. And like by that time there's too many neighbors out and stuff like that. Yeah. And my grandfather tried to stand in the road so they wouldn't go. And they almost hit him. He had to jump quickly into the grass. And then a neighbor followed them in a van, followed them and tried to help and saw a cop, a state trooper, and was like, hey, they're kidnapping this little girl. They were like, you have to go to the station and report it.
No.
Swear. And they took her to Canada for a whole month. My baby sister.
So they didn't get away with you. They tried. They were trying, but they got your little sister, got her for a month.
A month. She was gone in Canada. I had to identify the guy that was hired to be the abductor. I had to, get checked about being sexually molested, like all of those things. And I would not walk outside unless I was attached to my mother for at least a year. My sister did come back. It was a whole thing, like the news. Her grandfather ended up from up in Canada bringing her back down. And, I just remember like the big news story and her coming back. And like, even when she was back, I mean, it took me many years to feel safe anywhere alone.
I'm sure.
To even go outside, even like as 7, 8 years old. Like I went through all that before 8 years old.
Well, and as a child, I mean, therapy's been around since then. I mean, the really trauma therapy has taken it taken its journey of effectiveness and probably more in our adult years.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're close to the same age. And so, I mean, you're just sitting with that trauma either. I mean, I don't know, when you think back, because I know you know a lot about it now, with that 2020 hindsight, how would you say that you were dealing with that trauma?
I don't think I had a clue how to deal with it. My mother was smart enough to put me in therapy. So I do remember my therapist, Dr. Kathy Geyer. I was a little girl, and she would take me to McDonald's, and she would talk to me at McDonald's. And I felt very safe with her. And I started talking about it really young, and but it always made, God, makes me emotional. It always made me feel really broken and dirty and damaged because of what happened to me. Like I felt pain. I felt fear. I didn't trust, figures that you should trust in your life. I had some anger towards my mother, later had the healing of understanding that like, hey, she was terrified for her life, and she did the best she could. Me and my mother have a great relationship today, but I acted out in all kinds of ways. My mother says I chugged a beer at 4 years old. I first smoked marijuana at 9, at a sleepover. My first addiction was shoplifting. I would steal like little things at stores that, my mom could have bought for me, or I could have said, hey mom, can I get this gum? But I liked that rush. It got me outside of myself.
Of course.
So I did anything to get outside of myself, honestly.
Well, both internally and externally, if you don't feel safe, like there's you're not going to stop searching until you find something that calms you, that provides you some sense of other.
Yeah. I never felt right in my skin. I never felt right in my body. I never, I just, it sounds like a Lifetime movie when I talk about it. Like, it's like so crazy, what I went through and what I lived through, and no child should ever have to go through that. However, I've been able to make sure that my children don't go through that.
Sure.
My children have like the most supportive, loving, healthy environment ever.
Before moving on, I have to ask you, your sister was gone for a month.
Yes.
What happened to her?
Well, she came back and, she was a baby. So she has no recollection of it happening, doesn't remember any of it, just kind of knows by us sharing with it. But, I think.
How old was she?
She was a year old.
Okay.
She was gone for her first birthday, I believe. So, now my sister and I we found out we were pregnant with our daughters the same day.
Wow.
We have daughters 2 weeks apart. We live down the street from one another. And, thankfully for her, she doesn't remember it. I'm sure inside it's affected her on a cellular level, as we know, but I lived it and I remember it all. And I don't know what's worse, not remembering it or fully remembering it. But I do feel that because I do know it and I do talk about it and I do feel comfortable, that I hope that I can help somebody else with how I didn't just survive this. I'm thriving,
Yeah, absolutely. Moving back to where you're going to therapy, you're going to McDonald's. I'm just trying to picture, because I remember McDonald's was so different back then. The 19, what would that have been, the 90, like 89 McDonald's, yes, like that era.
Around then, because I'm born in 81. So
okay, yeah. So, still, that was the time where like all the tables still had like cigarette ashtrays on them.
I don't remember that part.
I don't know why I remember that.
I remember the booth. We were like in a booth. We had a little bit of privacy, but she did it so I could play with the cars and like, all that kind of stuff. And it was, I remember like just a really great experience with her, like great first therapy experience. And I've been in therapy my whole entire life.
That's
so
awesome.
On and off.
But so I am curious, like when you describe what that process was like of being in therapy, and what you got from that. I know that you probably did a lot of talking about it because she needed to get information. But when you think back with your educated adult mind, do you remember any shifts or transformations that happened, or memories that came to because of that process?
I don't really remember specifics. The overall remember it being like a positive experience of someone I felt safe with after so many adults not feeling safe with. I also, I remember it, like now I look back and I say, well, that was the start to many years of healing, even though I went down some dark roads after that. But I think being introduced to it at such a young age made it easier for me to do it in later years, and I always just look back and I just have a positive light around that time, if that makes sense. And I also had really good people in my life, like my godmother, who passed away when I was 18. She's my first tattoo on my leg. Her and my aunt were a couple, and they raised me with my mom. And they were like the best teachers of I learned all about so many good things of how to be a strong woman and women's rights and gay rights. And I was helping their friends run for office. So all of that was kind of going at the same time. So I had some really good, solid people, adult figures that were counteracting all of the ones that I, were hurt by.
Sure. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about, while, as we know, we can have, healthy alternatives and good role models and what have you. But some of us just we may never know the reasons why, certain coping mechanisms are gunning for us. Right. And you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. At such a young age, you started acting out and using some of those. So, what was that trajectory like for you with going from experimentation to regular usage and so on?
So I was in the entertainment business as I was a child model and acting and all of that stuff, and did print work. And when I was doing that in my elementary, middle school, early high school years, I was really on a good path. I was in sports. I was doing all these positive things. I was, really living out loud and kind of expressing myself in a beautiful way, a positive way. And that shifted when I started high school. So I went from channeling it into positive outlets, creativity and sports and all these things, into my freshman year in high school, finding every older boy drug dealer there was in my school. I found them. I sought them out. And then all of the things that I was doing in the entertainment business and stuff like that, and all my sports, just all stopped at that time. Restarted later, but stopped for a while. Yeah. I found what I was looking for. I found the bad boys, kind of like my abuser, but not no one sexually abused me or raped me, but I put myself in situations I could have been. But sure. In high school, I did probably every drug while at school. We took roofies willingly. We took acid at school. This is a freshman. I'm 14 years old, and just it escalated pretty fast in high school. I tried a lot of things.
So how did it go from trying to addiction?
Yeah.
What did that look like?
For me, it was tricky because I was put in my first institution at 14. So I was put in a place called Sandy Pines, a psych hospital in Jupiter, Florida. And, I was starting to act out behaviorally on top of the things I was using, and sneaking out and stealing my mom's car and raiding their liquor and all that stuff. And at the time, my parents let me and my friends kind of party in the house. They thought if I'm going to drink and smoke pot, do it at home. And I get that concept, but don't do it as a parent, please. It's not good, because my house was just it was allowed, and there was times when I could clean it. I'm the kind of person that I could clean it up. I could get off of the thing and I could clean it up and I could pull it together, after a stint of being forced to go somewhere. Then I was brought to this program. It was called Growing Together. I was told I was going to a psychiatrist appointment, and they locked the doors. And so my mom said, "Oh, let's go to a new psychiatrist." All of a sudden, and I'm and they go, "You're going to be here for a year to 3 years." I had a boyfriend. I had things to do. for a year to 3 years. And I was 15 years old and there was no fucking way I was doing that. No way.
I mean, I would have, I don't know, but I would have probably lost it.
Oh yeah. I was put in a little padded kind of room for a little bit.
Yeah.
I did lose my shit. And it was it was corrupt. It's kind of like it was like closed down and condemned. And there's like a slew of us in South Florida that went through this program and we all have a trauma bond. I didn't complete it. So I'll tell you, because I did not take that and I did not accept that. And that was not going to be what I did. So I stayed for a month, found another girl that wanted to escape with me. So you went to people's houses and stayed at people's houses that had been in the program for a year that were phased up. No TV, no radio, no, like you couldn't, no books, no nothing. You couldn't do anything. You had to sit on church pews all day long and do groups and do this weird thing. They called it motivating, like this. Like it was very culty and weird. Oh. You could only see your parents on Friday nights from across the whole room, them talking to you on a microphone. You couldn't say anything to them. That was the only time for like a year. So you stayed at other people's houses in a sexy nightie.
They serve Kool-Aid?
Probably.
Yeah, it was a Kool-Aid joke. Sorry.
I like it. It was a weird, creepy place.
Wow.
And so they had you sleep in a nightie, like a sexy lingerie nightie at 14, 15 years old with a dad in the house.
What?
Oh yeah. And that's what you had to sleep in because they thought you wouldn't escape. They'd alarmed the windows and they child locked the cars when you were transported from the block facility to the houses. It was just very disturbing. And then you slept in a room, mattresses all on the floor, alarmed windows, and nothing but in your nightie and on the floor with other girls that had been there. So I don't know who approved of this kind of program, but it was just disturbing. So I wasn't scared to run away in a nightie.
I mean, if you're going to run away, clearly you would already have been like, if it's time to run away.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you're wearing.
No.
Whatever.
I did smuggle in some shorts and I did smuggle in some like high socks. Uh-huh. So when I ran away and I knew there was woods, I at least had like something going on. So I ran away one time and then I ended up trafficking drugs to Georgia with my boyfriend at the time and calling my mom really messed up in Atlanta and going to juvenile detention center there. My dad had to pick me up. He was pretty pissed off. Uh-huh. And then I went back to the program for another month, escaped again. And then finally my mom realized this place is whack, you know, and let me stay home. But so I stayed on track for a while. Like I was able to pull it together. You know what I mean? Like I'm back and, doing some modeling stuff. I'm doing like getting good grades in school. Then I would go down a rabbit hole. At 17, I got arrested with a felony charge and spent 30 days in juvenile detention center. That was awful.
Mm. Was that... Okay, so we've talked about so many different levels of trauma one can experience in really a short period of time. Compared to all that trauma that you experienced, the shame and guilt that you felt when this arrest happened, was it like a different level that hit you?
Yeah, it was embarrassing too. So it was we went to this one Dunkin' Donuts when we were messed up. It was open 24 hours and we would mess with this one guy that worked there. And there was like always a thing and he was a little crazy, but I was like all Xanaxed out, drunk. I ordered an egg and cheese croissant. I left, tried to steal it, like walk out the door with it. And he locked me in and I punched him and I don't remember any of it. So I wake up in the juvenile detention center and I'm like, I took an egg and cheese sandwich. Like, why am I? And they were like, no, you're being charged with a second degree felony. Like you're being charged with robbery because you used force and stole something. Wow. So yeah, I was mortified. I had no idea. But that time in juvenile detention center, I saw some and heard some things and it scared me, but not enough to fully stop, just to stop for a little bit.
Did that feel like a new low bottom for you?
Yes. I mean, when I was 15, did that run away from rehab. I was in detention center there for like 2 days until my dad got me because I called my mom all roofied out and told her where I was. So they came, the cops came and got me. I was a runaway. So that was a little stint that scared me, and Atlanta was scary. But being there for a month, like I was, it was a definite low. And knowing that I was I got it expunged. I had to do like the Scared Straight program and go tour a women's correctional facility and do community service, but it's not on my permanent record. So it did scare me. Cause I had no idea of what I even did fully. I was blacked out.
Yeah. Wow. So after you did that program, is that when you finally got sober?
No.
Okay. What happened next?
It's just a lot of, just finding people that did hard drugs and bar scenes. And I bartended in a lot of nightclubs, bartended in strip clubs. I was in and out of dabbling in and out of the entertainment business. But like my last casting I went to, I was like up from the night before and like totally embarrassed myself. My last hurrahs with like hanging out with like Dr. Dre and Eminem's people, like I was asked to leave because there was a PR event and I was like so messed up that
You're not good
myself.
for PR at that point.
Yeah. I was, I had a lot of so many amazing opportunities like in that field and I just completely destroyed them. So that was a really tough one for me to stomach. I thought, I had a guy I partied with. He couldn't hang like I could. He was more of a drinker. I was more of a like stay up for a week girl on cocaine and whatever else, but I would make sure I drink my like, Ensure drink to get my vitamin. A guy was like doing the juice and this and that. And it was absolutely insane. And I was like, thought I had a remedy and a whatever for everything. I was like a mad scientist of like all the shit I'd put in my body. So I found a guy that was just a heavy drinker. And I thought once I got married and had a baby that like I'd get better. Although I was introduced to recovery like at 14, my aunt was a in and out of AA alcoholic. Right. I had, my dad, when I found out my dad, I found out he was also in recovery. That's why he wasn't in my life early on. Right. So yeah, it basically was my son, having my son, the first 18 months of his life, I was still bartending, still staying up all night doing cocaine, left him in dirty diapers, which I used to be able to never get out without bawling because I felt like such a piece of crap. That's shame. Sure, that's shameful. Like as a woman and a mom or as a parent or, to know that like I chose to stay up all night than like hang out and play with my son as a baby was like, that ate me up and actually made me get worse. And then I found pain pills. I was in the pain pill era down in South Florida.
And that was one of the vortexes. Just, it's amazing that you're alive on so many levels.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've crashed cars. I've jumped out of moving cars. I've been in so many, I'm meant to be here to do greater things. Let's just say that these situations I put myself in. I'm very, very dangerous.
So what finally shook you to the point of grabbing hold of sobriety?
Well, my aunt kind of was in and out. But back in the day, somehow she got like, now anyone can get whatever delivered to their house. But she was getting handle bottles from the little down the street store delivered like back in like 2005. So she was out she went hard, when she went out. And so she was out at the time and she lived down the street from me. And I was like, I feel something feels weird. I went and checked on her. I looked through her window and she was blue. Oh. She was dead. And at the time
From alcohol,
full body failure.
Wow.
Yeah. Our organs and everything just shut down. And I could see her through the window blue with her dogs in the house. And I was sober at that time for like 90 days. And I went in her house and took pills because that's where I was at.
Oh my God.
And I got worse from that before I got better. But she left me a little money and I used it to go to rehab.
Wow.
And I'm still in recovery since.
The dichotomy there of like the trauma of showing up, seeing what happened, the fact that she had like the last using that you did started at her death, but also because of her death, you had the money to get wow.
Yeah. And she was, she's raised me she was my godmother's partner for 30 years. My godmother ended up leaving her because of her alcoholism. But like when my aunt was at her best, she was like, absolutely incredible, brilliant. Just had that, she never believed in it for herself, but she believed in it for me. And she always told me that. She's like, you're a good candidate for recovery, like when I was really young. And she believed in it for me. And so I ran with it. And I was the worst client in treatment punching people.
Are we talking about the final time you went?
This is the last time.
Okay. So even that time you were...
The first 30 days.
Not a daisy.
Oh, no. I was like your nightmare client. Like the people would be probably sending out to like another program these days. Like, oh, she's got to go. Only thing I didn't do.
Did you go in South Florida?
I did.
Okay. That's why they kept you.
Hey.
No offense to...
We're cleaned up.
I know.
But back then, there was literally like a few spots in town.
Exactly. That's what I meant, because we're talking about in the past. Not present tense.
2007, I looked in the yellow pages. That's how I found treatment.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. I'm aging myself here.
More than half of our audience right now is going, what are the yellow pages?
Okay. It's a book that you used to find things in instead of Google. So yeah, I looked in the yellow pages and I only knew about like Betty Ford in California. And that's where I wanted to go because I wanted to get as far away from myself as I could. I've tried that geographical thing many times to try and change my life. New York and LA for short stints. But, going down the street from my house where I could still see my son and learn how to be a mom was what I wanted to do. But my first spiritual awakening of like, what the F are you doing, was the owner of the treatment center sitting me down and being like, what are you doing? Like, do you want to still live like this? Like whatever he said, and he was a little bit arrogant. I didn't really like him, but it was the message that hit. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting here causing havoc, sneaking in energy drinks on a pass and running away. And so for whatever it was that he said hit me. And from that day forward, I started to follow like one suggestion at a time, like tiptoeing, like, okay, I'll do my assignment, my little king baby, or, like whatever the treatment assignment was. Yep. And, and from there, like, it's been a beautiful, sometimes painful, steps forward, steps back, a lot of hard decisions. But choosing me and choosing the healing journey and the spiritual path has not diverted.
That's amazing. Side note, really quick. So I also got sober in treatment, and about halfway through my treatment stint, got sat down by the operations director, the guy who was running the place.
Yeah.
With I think 2 of his assistants, and they basically had the same conversation you described with me, and said like, dude, we don't know if we're keeping you. Yeah. We found out you lied. I lied about legal trouble that I had not been in. Yes. I definitely wasn't. And they said the same thing. They were like, dude, you're in a group of people that want to get sober, and we don't feel like you want it. What are you doing here?
Oh yeah.
And they left me with questions. Like, I didn't know if they were going to keep me or not.
Yeah.
It ultimately forced me to do what you were describing, which was, I called the head to heart drop, where I finally surrendered because I knew I was out of choices.
I was too. Yeah. I tried to run away and call people from payphones, and there was nobody to call anymore either.
Same. And I think that until for many of us, our bottom has to look like it's not fun anymore. It's not working for us anymore. And the connections like are done. Like, we're not, the last person available has finally said no and put their foot down. And
the last people that were available were actually like the most dirty.
Oh yeah.
And I just didn't even want, like, I was at least in that straight frame of mind where I'm like, nah, I don't want to go there. Mm-hmm. Like I romanced like my days of partying in South Beach and being in entertainment like it was yesterday. It had been like years, and I had no idea. Like, I looked in the mirror at myself and I was 200 something pounds, face full of acne. I still thought I was like my little South Beach model self. Like, I was so unhealthy. I was, gorge eating. I was, taking pain pills. Like, thank God I got clean, before the heroin epidemic, because that would have killed me, because I couldn't even handle like, hardcore pain pills, like the oxys and stuff like that. I'd never even tried those. The big ones got me enough. So I feel fortunate because I've lost like so many friends to heroin, and then now, fentanyl. But like all the girls I grew up with are dead or still on methadone, or, not parenting their children, or those are my high school friends. Like my boyfriend has like all these relationships from like college and high school. And I'm like, I wish I had that, but I love it for you and I can experience it through you.
Yeah.
Mine are dead or I've helped them change their life now. Yeah, it was pretty sad what was going on in my community, but I romanced that fun time for way too long. Like it had not been fun and it had not been a party in a really long time.
Exactly.
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.
You know, and I would just wanted to speak to, because the same thing, sometimes I look back and wish that, because I have many quality, wonderful, great relationships that I've developed over the years since I got sober. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the relationships outside of sobriety that I have, the normies, if you will, mm-hmm. you know, they talk about their college friends or their friendships that they develop. So most of us who are in recovery don't necessarily have strong relationships of friends and what have you that were from before our sober date.
No, and I love experiencing it through my partner. Like I love that like quality about him and that he has that. But I go, God, I wish I could do like wish I had it. But I love being able to share that like through someone else's lens that I love, you know?
Yeah. Well, and there's something to, it's always about perspective, right? If you're looking for what you're missing out on, you're going to feel like you missed out. If you're looking for gratitude and the fact that I should be dead right now, and the fact that I have relationships that I was able to develop people that want to spend time around me, that Absolutely. Would have good things to say about me today, is also a miracle.
That's a miracle. I mean, I remember like when my one of the first people I sponsored, like her mom, like calling me and like thanking me for being in her life, and I was like, oh my God, nobody's mom wanted me around them. Like now today, I've even had like a guy I broke that we parted ways, split up, and his mom, dad, and best friend all reached out to me. I'm so sorry that, we love you. Thank you for being so good to him. Like that's the kind of person I am in relationships today. Like I'm a really good friend. I show up for my friends. I love hard. I love deeply. I'm a girl's girl. Like I love women. I don't hate on women. I will be the first one to be like, you're gorgeous or you're hot or I love your shirt. Like if a woman is coming up and professionally, like I want to be someone that reaches out a hand to lift them up.
Yeah.
I'm like, and not a hater. I'm like the opposite of that.
I can feel that. I can feel that in you so much. I want to ask you, because I know how imperative it is in the recovery process. What role did community play for you in that first year, those formative years of your recovery journey?
Everything. I mean, I had to, I was in my hometown, right? So I was someone that couldn't go anywhere without seeing somebody. And oddly, I did not see one person from my like addiction life for a year.
Wow.
And then I saw an old drug dealer boyfriend at a gas station at that time. I was like, what? You know what I mean? But I dove all the way in the community, like was going on the retreats and the campouts and the conventions and like was involved in service and like all the things. And it taught me so much. And I've had to shift, of course, certain things in groups and like change. Okay, this home group isn't working for me, or this isn't working for me. I've had to add things into my personal work. But in the beginning, that like the first 5 years, it was literally my saving grace, because I felt like I belonged somewhere of people, most that were kind and mm-hmm. were loving how I was, but I've also learned that not everyone in recovery or not everyone in, my profession is kind and loving the way I am either.
People are people everywhere you go.
That was a hard awakening for me though, because I was like seeing everything through rose-colored glasses, like, oh, we're all love, we love, and we're sober, and and we're in recovery. We do, but it's human beings, right? We're dealing with, and so, but I have been blessed to have like really great people in my life. I attract and find and bring in beautiful people, and I believe that's because of what I put out. Back in the day, I never brought in a good person. Mm-hmm. I found like the shittiest people to hang out with.
Yeah. What did because our literature in the 12 steps and recovery rooms talks about acceptance. I like to refer to a more, because I think it's a second level of acceptance for those of us who actually get sober. Like we throw our hands up and it's radical. So like when you experience radical acceptance, what did that really look like? Those themes in your first, because I know like when I look back at that first year, there were some major things that were apparent in my own life. What was that for you?
It was for me, it was like honestly, such a relief. Like I felt like I could breathe. I felt like I had a lot of answers to things. Like I was never scared of the step work. I was never scared of, I knew how much I needed to heal my wounds. And like, I felt, I was someone that people would be like, oh, you're in a pink cloud, you're going to fall off that. And like, hating on that. I was always happy. So I had 4 years of like not one bump in the road. And then since year 4, and it's now like a 17, I have had nothing but change and adversity and hard choices, So I think that really was beneficial for me to have that like even keel, like pink cloud, like ish, acceptance and everything flowing and very good consistency helped me to prepare for all the things that were ahead.
Well, I think that's so beautiful too, because given how you explained your formative years were, I know for myself, before I experienced the chaos of addiction, I was fortunate enough to have years where I had peace. I knew what safety felt like. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like there wasn't a giant chunk of time where that was the case for you.
Yeah.
And so being able to find a baseline, what sounds like for the first time in your life, was probably priceless.
Huge.
And divine, because if we don't, I was talking about this with Erin yesterday about how important it is for us as adults to be able to have the chance to understand what a baseline is mentally, when it comes to just mental and emotional health and stability. And if we don't have the opportunity because circumstances are so chaotic, whether they're internal or external, our chances are really slim. Yeah. It's just the truth.
And it changes too. It shifts and changes as I have more experience in life, and continue on the spiritual healing journey, that shifts and changes too, like what the baseline is and what
absolutely
the tolerance
but
level.
You had a starting point. And so that's what I mean is you had 4 years of finding some peace and finding a place of baseline, if you will, before real life started to hit you. And
what a gift.
Yeah.
What a gift. Because I've had, especially the past few years have been like, I've had to do some of the hardest things I've ever had to do.
Tell me about one of them.
Walking away from a marriage, telling a good man and good father that I didn't want to be married to him anymore. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Awful. Everyone felt really bad for him. And, and I understand because he was heartbroken, but like to be that person too, to be the one that says it and doesn't do something shady, like cheat or whatever, right. Like to be that, to just have that conversation when you have a family and you have a home and you built a life together was one of the hardest things for me to tell my children, for me to tell my ex. And then after that to go through heartbreak of my own, to get like absolutely like in a way that I'd never been before. Some really hard shit, and then to now find like my person, like, love, like all of that stuff brought me to where I am now. And I'm so grateful for it. But it was some really hard, heavy choices to choose me and believe that this was out there for me. Cause I knew it was, knew it. My gut knew it.
Let's talk about that for a second. Getting sober, long-term recovery. It can be so difficult and feel so difficult at the time. But in the grand scheme of things, it's very black and white. Using, not using, getting sober, not staying sober. That early time of the simplicity of what trajectory looks like, of taking care of yourself and doing better day by day by day by day.
Mm-hmm.
And then
goals.
as life gets granted to us, we find a baseline, things happen, and you've got a big life decision to make because life is lifing. And
I like that.
because it's what it's
true.
trying to do.
Truth. I feel it.
And because you're an adult, you've got to make a decision that is really tough, that in so many ways, there's not a black and white roadmap for you.
No.
And you don't have the social feedback or support that it was like when you were getting sober and making choices around taking care of yourself at the beginning of sobriety.
Oh, nobody understood me, but I knew.
But you knew, and you had to follow your gut.
Yeah.
What did taking care of yourself and maintaining sobriety look like through weathering the storm of making that decision?
Well, I mean, there was like a couple people that understood me. Like my kids were shocked. He was shocked. Everybody was shocked. So it was, I caught a lot of heat from like people in my industry because he worked in the field, from people like mutual friends, like the kids. Like it was really, really intense. It was staying really spiritually grounded, knowing who I am, and knowing that like I was so lost for years of like avoidance, where I stayed so focused on goals and building, taking care of the kids, that like I forgot about like what I needed and what I wanted, and everybody made sure everybody else was good and happy, like super codependence on the family unit. And I started to have panic attacks. I started to have things come out in different ways that if I would have stayed in that situation, my mental stability would have been compromised. And I was very clear on that. And so I knew that in my gut, even in moments of crying and despair and, dropping the kids off and just bawling, sitting on my couch on Sunday nights when I didn't have them, like I had to walk through all of that. But I knew my manifestor is really powerful and my gut instinct is really powerful. And I never once second guessed my decision.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because that was definitely a hard thing.
So hard.
Especially as a mom, when it's not just something that affects you. In situations like this, especially marriage, people always talk about, the decision affects the other person as well, and yada yada. But when you have kids, you're talking about a whole different ballgame.
It affects ripples of people.
Yes.
I didn't realize how many people
and all
were affected.
the people that are connected to the kids and their opinions, and like you referenced, it's just, I mean, the levels of, I can't imagine what that is like.
It was my little girl's first trauma.
Can I ask you how she described that to you?
She didn't describe it in that manner, but just because I'm so in tune with her and in tune with that, I knew that my daughter had roses and butterflies were her life, right? Mommy and daddy, and she loves her family, and we're always, her and I would do a lot more things actively with the kids, but she had never experienced any adversity until that. And that's when she realized the moment, both my kids, that I'm not perfect. Like mom has her own stuff, and mom, so it was actually a beautiful moment. If that's the kind of trauma that she sees by me making hard choices to do what's best for me and best for everybody, really, because if that's how I feel that's best for everyone, then I put her in therapy. Literally the day after I told her, I had her at a woman I sponsored's house who was a therapist, had her talk to her. I played with the dog, and then she started therapy once a week for a year. And she's amazing. And me and her dad get along great. And it's great co-parenting. And so if that's what her trauma was especially compared to mine, I'm okay with it today.
And I think that there's so many, one could say there's so many goals in long-term sobriety, but I think one of the biggest ones for me, if you were to ask Patrick, like, what do you seek now that it's not about just not taking a drink anymore? For me, it's I need peace. Life is gonna life. And like, we're going to have to do the adulting that we don't like to do. And it's going to look like things like that.
Yeah.
Where the decision looks like you're effed if you do, you're effed if you don't. Which way are you less effed? And at that point, you've got to follow your gut. And you don't know, like you said, you're human. You don't know what. So you just do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah. And choosing what's best for yourself, for your mental wellness,
yes.
for your healing. Like, I'm committed to a healing journey and personal growth and, you know, becoming a better version of me and being a better mother. Like, those are the things. And if I have to make hard decisions that maybe people don't understand, but it's best for me, and I'm clear on that. Like, I went to therapy before to make sure this was what I wanted to do. And I'm still with that therapist now. Years later, I see her every week. So she's been through everything with me. And it's just been such an instrumental part of my healing, you know, being consistent with like meditation, prayer, fitness, taking care of myself, you know, and therapy is like, for me, I have to.
1000% same. I want to revisit how I framed that just a second ago, saying you're effed if you do, you're effed if you don't. What I meant is more of the, when you're weighing out the consequences of making these big decisions in sobriety. Typically when we look at these, it's those initial consequences. The fallout is going to be staying. There's going to be fallout leaving. Like, either way you make the choice, there's going to be fallout.
Yeah.
But by following your gut, knowing the long term, the payoff in the end is what you were, you know, fortunately you were right. And
choosing yourself, you'll always win when you do what's best for you. When you're not harming other people. Of course, people were affected, but I didn't harm anyone. I ultimately did the best thing for my ex-husband as well, because if I was feeling the way I was feeling, I'm not doing him a service by staying either.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think he honors that today too.
So, what led to you doing interventions, starting your company, like all the stuff that you're doing today?
Yeah, it's been a cool experience. So I did, you know, I was in outreach for many years in our field for about a decade. The last company I worked for was in out of state, and I worked like mostly with employers and, you know, specialized in that, like EAPs and unions and stuff. And I kind of got to a place where I kept being first working for Florida programs, and that height of that was like it was embarrassing at the time, because we were just so, if I said I was from Florida at an out of state thing, like I was just like shamed automatically. And then I started working for programs out of Florida. My marketing tool was, hey, get your clients out of Florida. And, but then the company I was at, like, I was like really good at what I did. And if I had a bad month, I was like shamed. And, you know, like I was only as good as my last month's production. Not all the companies are like that, but I had that experience. And I started to work for a case management company on the side and train and fill in for this girl that had a baby. And I like fell in love with it. I started training second chairs for interventions. I started doing companion work, started, you know, I got certified in, you know, all these different things, recovery coaching, life coaching. And I just started to fall in love with it, as to where when I started in the industry, I had zero interest in working directly with any clients. Like I was like, oh, no way. No families, no clients. Like, I just want to pass on insurance information and contact information. Like, I don't want to be touched, but it shifted. Something changed in me. And so I was doing this work on the side for 2 years, like on weekends and nights and things like that, and really building my brand and my name. So when I did go off on my own, it wasn't like, oh, Amanda Marino's now an interventionist and a coach. Like I had and before I took one intervention case on my own, I had been training with people for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I was pretty much done with my CIP by the time I did my own like intervention.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I wanted to do it the right way. I didn't want to be somebody that was like, hi, today I'm an interventionist. You know, like it was really important to me. It's like, if someone's life is in my hands, I need to take this really serious.
Which is what it is. And it's not just it's a whole unit of people.
Yeah.
As we've seen play out so many times for those of us who've watched your show.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what are some things that when you look at your time and experience, being an interventionist, what's something like a main theme that has been most fascinating to you? And I think something that you didn't already know about us and the human experience and addiction. Because I will say, interventionists, I truly believe, play a specific role. There's a specific part of the recovery process that interventionists participate in that nobody else who works in treatment, no other position in a treatment facility experiences. Because we're talking.
Yeah, it's complex.
Yes.
I mean, I think one of the things that I added on quickly was a clinical component, knowing that I'm not a licensed clinician, but I wanted a clinician involved in all my cases. So that was like having a like the family before and after needs more than just like the screenings and the pre-intervention I learned. And like, so now I give families like a session with a psychologist before and after, because they would spiral right before and they would spiral right when their loved one got to treatment. The family is harder. I mean, is a lot of times harder than the client, because they hold a lot of the power. And if they go waver and go back on the things that we've discussed, like I can identify like the one, like the mom or the sister who's going to be the one that needs the more work. And I'll give them more time with the psychologist, more time with us. So the family piece, I was not fully aware of like how in depth and like how much goes on in that and how much it plays a role in all of it. That has been, the more I do, I'm just like, wow, I've never heard of this one before. Oh, never seen this before. Like that happens all the time. Also, sometimes the dangerous situations that you don't know, like you can ask all the questions on the front end, but sometimes you fully don't know what you're stepping into. That's why I prefer invitational, but sometimes it's not possible to try to soften that blow before we walk in, because I've had, guns cocked. I've had people try to fight me.
Which for those of you who don't know, explain the different types of intervention.
So I thankfully was trained, by multiple different people and learned all different ways. So the Johnson model is like the one you see on the show, which is more of a surprise method, where they don't know, they walk in and they see, oh, my family's here. Hey, can you come have a seat? And they're just completely caught off guard, which sometimes is the only way to do it. But the invitational model is where, it can be ahead of time, or it could be sometimes right before, like, hey, I have some people outside. I asked them to come talk to us. I never tell people to say the word intervention. Family meeting. We decided to get some help, get some professionals that can help guide we're going to have a family meeting. And that time, I mean, sometimes people are pissed still, but they're at least not completely shocked and caught off guard. So it sometimes lessens the blow. So, and sometimes I do a combination of the models, you know what I mean? So I don't work with just one model. It depends on like what we all decide as a team, because I'm a team girl. Like I have a team, we work together as a team, with the family's part of the team, psychologist part of the team, my psych nurses who do the evaluations, they're part of the team. So what we feel will be the best approach for this person, because I want to get to know them as much as possible before I'm in there. I want to connect with them. I don't want to come in and shame them. I want to come in there and bring them, I understand that you didn't choose this, but like, what can we do from here? And if we don't go that day, then I want to keep the family strong to help them go the next couple of days. Mm-hmm. So yeah. It's definitely I continually learn. Like I continually learn. It's a learning experience each case I work.
I was just about to say, every single case is different.
Yeah. And the show was a whole nother thing. Like the show cases on the show intervention, the cases I had worked on there were not like my normal cases, right?
Really?
No, they were much more intense, like crazy situations. And they were real, like they were real life crazy. I hadn't seen somebody do hard drugs in a really long time until the show in person. Like I hadn't seen that in a long time. I saw that, and it's all real. Like there's nothing staged. It's literally me being myself, which was really important to me. But yeah, they were really intense, sad situations, and to see what's going on in a lot of countries, a lot of cities in America, I think we're a little blinded by that, by some privilege that we have, that like knowing that like there's a lot of kids out there living in trap houses.
Yeah.
And that's going on everywhere. There's a lot of communities that police can't go in because the crime rate's so high. Like I was kind of, in my little, like working with my high end kind of clientele bubble. And the show really brought me back to like the reality of like, it made me want to do something to help impact that in some way. I'm still like festering and sitting with it.
Because the show doesn't just sit with or serve. They go in multi socioeconomic. Like it's not just one demographic that they're helping, right?
No, it's all different. And I happen to be, with a multitude, but the two of them were pretty like lower, and pretty sad situations, with seeing what I saw and witnessing what I witnessed. And it was good for me. It was healthy for me. But I definitely manifested that because coming from entertainment, I had said when I got into recovery, like once I started working in this industry, I said, I want to be on intervention. And I want to be a woman of substance in front of a camera now, not like shaking my ass on a hip hop music video. Like I want to be, because I'm good at what I do and I help people. And so I definitely have had that. That was a big dream come true for me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
You heard it here, folks. From shaking her ass to being an upstanding woman in recovery.
From being the one white girl in a hip hop video many times.
Oh my gosh.
I have been that girl.
I mean, but what a testament, because God, we all got a past.
Oh yeah. It gets a little deeper, which I will not talk about on camera.
Sure. But I love that, like you said, you manifested it as well. And then it brought us together. It brought so many of these things together that you're doing to create change in the world, that motivates positive shift in the lives of other people.
I'll tell you, the executive producer, Mark Perez, I worked with him on digital addiction and I worked with him on intervention, and he is a beautiful soul. Like it was his first year on intervention this year. He cares so much. The crews that he brought together, like the people, because of his years of working in the business, like the people he brought in all cared so deeply and really allowed like me to be me and me to do the work and ask me questions. And when they didn't know, they didn't impose things on, it was like our safety and the client safety first. And Mark really helped make my dreams come true, like by believing in me for 2 shows, to do this with him. So I give him a lot of love. I give Mike Gonzalez, who was on the show for many years. He recommended me years ago for the show. Ken Seeley recommended me years ago for the show. So, I've had a lot of mentors. I've had a lot of great people that have, I'm brave and ballsy and say, hey, I want to do this. And that's one thing that I think is different. Like people say, oh, how do you make this stuff happen? I go, well, I just am crazy enough to actually try it, even though I know I might fail. And so that's like, if anyone doubts themselves out there, like from going to a next level or a big dream, just believe it's possible and like, go for it. That's my message.
Love it. Yeah. Well, and you're doing so many things to help elevate other people's struggle to triumph, on your own media platforms and different things, which, we'll have beneath the whatever you're consuming the show on. We've got links below for everything. Awesome. Amanda Marino, so you can check all her stuff out. I want to ask you, I always like to close the show out and say, if you were to think about if there was just that one person, or we'll say multiple people, because I know there are multiple people, but even if it's just that one person that's listening right now and thinking, wait, but it's probably just me. That connected with your story really deeply. What words of encouragement would you like to leave with them?
Well, I think it goes back to where we started with the trauma. If you've been hurt, if you've been through something that you feel like you're really alone, if you have depression, mental health struggles, trauma, whatever it may be, you're not alone. If you feel like there's no hope for you and you're too messed up and too broken, you're not. There's hope for anyone and everyone. And, it's the bravest thing you can do is reach out for help and let somebody else know you're struggling. And it also lessens your pain right there from that one step. And sometimes that step today can just be a DM. It can be like, I've had multiple people on LinkedIn tell me they've never told anybody anything, but like picking up a phone, I get it. That's hard. And like, but we have other ways now where we can, be brave and go get the help, because you're meant to do great things. You're meant to live a beautiful, out loud, magical life. And the world needs you to be a healed version of yourself.
I'll echo that and say, just tell somebody that's a good, safe person, so that it's not a secret anymore.
Yeah.
You can DM Amanda, you can DM me.
Just one person.
Yeah.
At least tell one person what's really going on.
Yeah.
That's what I always say. Just tell one person. You don't have to tell everybody everything.
Yeah.
You could tell this person this thing that you feel comfortable talking to them about. You could talk to this person about whatever it is. Just don't sit alone. Like so many people in this world are suffering all alone.
Yeah.
And all alone with their thoughts. And they're scared to tell people. They're ashamed of their struggles. Like, please, like we're not in that world today. Don't live like that. You deserve more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being here today.
Thank you. You're a beautiful soul.
You are too. This has been such an honor, and thank you for sharing your story. Unwrapping one's trauma and past and everything is very delicate, and I don't hold that lightly. It's an honor that you've chosen to share that with us today, and because it's a tool, and I do believe that you were kept around here for a reason. So.
Yes, I'm definitely, I hope that I can at least help one person by them listening to this today to not have to hurt themselves any longer because they're hurting.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for you. And thank you so much for like taking time to meet with me today and on the beautiful eclipse day and spend this time with me.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. Serendipitous.
Yes.
With that, I'll remind each and every one of you, if you're a regular, you know this, but it's never too late to start loving yourself. And you're always only ever one decision away from a completely different life.
Absolutely.
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.